Yeah, hi.
What?
What? Yeah.
Right, welcome to the Audio Mill, Slowcraft. My name's Stephen.
I'm Tilde.
And Tilde is teaching me to knit.
Yeah.
We're married.
And I'm teaching you about the different elements of knitting.
The elements of knitting.
And today it's all about the needles.
So yeah, good. The last video was about yarn weights from fine to super chunky and beyond even. And, you know, what is yarn and all that kind of stuff. But now, and I actually am very interested in this, what is needles? Why do we need different types of needles? What's going on? Why is there so many? It's all a bit overwhelming. But yeah, so let's kind of talk about that. So basically, why is needle size important?
Well, you've obviously got different thickness of wool, as we discussed last time. So I've just taken the two extremes, which is this one here. I don't know if you can see, but it's like a thread. So this is your lace weight.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got your super chunky. So, sorry, your super chunky. And obviously, for a super chunky, you want to use like a 10mm needle.
So these are quite nice. These are the kind of beginner needles. So oh, there's so much mess here. Let's make some space. So if you were to start off knitting, you might use, let's switch the camera, this. So basically what you're saying is the size of the needle, the thickness of the needle tends to correspond with the thickness of the wool.
Yeah.
But could I knit really thin needles with really thick wool?
Well, if you look at, let's just take my sock needles here. This one here, and I've got the other one here. It wouldn't really be practical to cast on something that thick.
Okay.
With like these ones are like 2.5mm needles.
Yeah.
So I would say you shouldn't really go below an 8mm with the super chunky. You do get a guide on your yarn, your ball band. There you can actually see what they recommend. That is not set in stone, by the way. So they recommend 10 to 12mm. Oh, sorry, I'm talking 10 to 15mm.
Oh, that is really tight. I didn't even notice that.
Yeah. So,
but
and these are the 15.
Okay, but the point is that you could change. It's not set in stone.
No.
You could use what you want. So these are quite cool. These are really big, thick. I would see these are kind of needles from back in the day, 50s, 60s, 70s. But these are obviously for knitting super chunky.
Yes.
It's also interesting that they're called, you might not be able to see this, a bit vague, warm, strong. I'm guessing that's because they're wooden needles.
Yes.
And wooden feels...
Wood is a bit warmer on the hands than metal needles, so you can...
You've got these metal ones here.
Yeah.
And they are, I mean, they feel quite surgical almost.
Yeah, well, there is people, again, it's very individual what you prefer. Some people like the coolness of the aluminium, and these ones are particularly slidey, so your stitches run really nice on them. But some people find them too slidey. So
here's an interesting set. It's a whole set, quite a nice, cool Filofax type case.
Yeah.
Your little bag with all your parts in it. Your Knit Pro. Now this is obviously a needle gauge. Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's a needle gauge.
And then that's one way of working out what kind of needles I've got. I'm holding on to.
Yeah, because you'll find that a lot of times, if the needle size is written on, this is really. Let's try and find one here where we can actually see a bit better. This one here, I think it's still a bit. But this is eventually going to rub off. This 9mm. So it's quite good that you have, and obviously I took a 9mm, which is bigger than this needle gauge.
Okay, so we're kind of jumping ahead here because here's the complex thing. Why are these needles a pair of needles? But I'm now getting familiar with knitting, and I know that these needles need to be joined with this bit of cable.
Yes, so they're
circular.
What
are they called?
They're circular needles.
And why do you... I mean, you kind of explained this to me one time, but I've forgotten. Why do we have to have circular needles?
So circular needles is made so you can knit in the round.
What does in the round mean?
That means that you can knit a jumper so you don't have any side seams. So you basically knit the front and the back at the same time. It's a bit kind of older style and especially used in the UK. It's kind of what's called flat knitting, which means that you knit things in pieces. Well, you obviously on the continent you do that as well.
Sorry, hold on. What's flat knitting is with 2 needles,
yes,
right?
yeah.
So really, the fabric forms
so you go
on the needle and starts to
Yeah.
come off the needle like this.
Yeah.
But in the round needles, the fabric starts to form coming off out your needle, coming out here,
Yes.
and you could almost have a round garment like the
Yeah.
beanie hat.
Yes. So when you're talking about a beanie hat, for example, this pair is really more for a garment than for a beanie hat, because for a beanie hat you need a much smaller circumference.
Circumference.
Yeah.
Why is that? Just cause.
Just cause I have one here, which is the one that you would use for a hat. So this is the one that's 40 centimeters long. You can see that's a much smaller one. And
But we
that's
can
the-
still bunch up lots of stitches onto
Yes.
this. And this would be much more like a waist size and bunching up the stitches.
Yeah, you can still.
So somebody's
you
waist is
can
not actually that size, but
No,
you're
no.
bunching up the stitches
Yeah.
and
You-
knitting quite tightly
Yeah.
to then form this big.
Yeah. Whereas, so this one
Fabric.
this is a 40 centimeters, where this one is the 80 centimeter. There's one. There's a kind of a standard one in between those two, which is 60 centimeter. I think these ones here. Again, these are wooden. You can see that is again slightly smaller than this pair here.
So this is quite interesting. You have a wooden pair, and these have kind of got a coating on them.
Yes.
You can see a quite shiny coating. So it's almost
There's
plasticky.
They
No, it's not a
have
bad
some-
feeling, but it's quite nice. And this
So
one's
these
wooden
are-
as well, and it's
yeah.
also got a laminate or a varnish on it.
Yeah, got a varnish. So both of these are the Knit Pro Symphony ones, and these ones is the Leica Driftwood. So they are very, very similar.
But then these are again back to your aluminium.
These
quite
are the
surgical
aluminium.
ones.
Yeah.
But
So-
but really, there's not much different apart from the size. In this case, you could have this size and wooden,
yeah,
different woods, different whatever. It doesn't really matter. Plastic even.
yeah, and they come as, so these ones they are here, the 9mm in this Sing Knit Pro Sing, they are fixed, so they don't come apart here. And these ones here are also fixed, whereas these ones are actually interchangeable, which means that you can change the length of your wire.
Okay, so this is quite interesting. So I'm guessing. See, if you follow me, what I'm doing, I'm using. What am I using? 10mm? No,
You're using 10mm.
I'm using 10mm
You're using
circular needles.
Yes, but you're using the 40 centimeter ones.
But I've also changed. I'm not just using 10mm. I use 10mm for the beanie, but for my fern beanie, I've changed to the smaller ones.
Yeah.
Which are what thickness?
You are on, I think that one you're on 4.5
Yeah.
millimeter, but again, it's still.
So in my collection of needles, I've got. I don't have actually these, but in the round, I've got thick 10mm ones.
Yeah.
I've got 4.5mm ones. But when would you want to think about buying a nice pack like this?
So first of all, before you start investing in a pack of needles, I would suggest that you buy a couple of different types of needles. So you try the metal ones, you try the aluminium ones, you try bamboo ones. So you basically figure out which ones are your favourite, because they can be like, so this I think is about, this set there is 114 pounds. So
That's
they can-
£114.
Yeah. You
This is the
also get
Leica Driftwood because of
Yeah.
this finish in the needles.
Yeah.
And you get all your cables in the
Yeah,
pocket.
you get all cables in the pockets and everything.
And this would last you, if not a lifetime, then a long time.
It will last you a long time, yeah. So
Okay,
it's-
so how do I know what needles I need?
well, It's basically on what your preference is in the knitting. To begin with, you would need some chunky needles, I would suggest. So you can...
No, well, wait. I mean, hold on. What I mean is a pattern would tell you.
Yes, so you'll go by your pattern.
But you told me you could change the needle size if you wanted to, depending on how your tension.
Yeah, so not really if you want to. Are we going to use here? No.
Oh, I don't know. Are we not? We're
No, I
switching
don't
back.
think. Just a thing. So, you should really know your tension. So you should ideally knit a tension square.
Okay, so tension. So I was knitting my hat. I don't have my knitting with me, but I was knitting my hat and I felt it was quite loose.
Yeah.
But that's probably how I'm beginning to form as a knitter, and I might adjust that as I get better.
Yeah, so you will fall into your own tension.
So it's okay to be an experienced knitter and just happen to be a loose knitter,
Yeah, it's fine.
or be experienced and tighter. And then, if you were experienced reading a pattern and it said a thickness of needle,
Let's say
right?
it's a double knitting, because that's generally suggests that you'd use a 4mm needle. If you were a loose knitter, you might go down to 375 needles, 375.
Right, so it's kind of
millimetre,
fractions.
or 3.5.
Fractions of a centimetre of a millimetre. It's not
Yeah.
a huge jump. It's just more. If
Well-
you know you're a loose knitter, you
Yeah.
could go to a smaller needle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also needle sizes, for example, they go from, in the smaller sizes, you jump in 1/4 of a millimetre, but after 4 you jump in 1/2 millimetre, and after 7 you jump in
Oh
10.
my goodness, this is all quite complicated.
It is
It's quite a
becoming,
lot.
yeah.
So this is where on our website we've got this needle, and I'm looking at it now. Knitting needle and crochet hook size conversion chart. What am I converting? I don't understand.
So some patterns you'll find that if you find a pattern where they're kind of only telling you what the US size is.
Oh, you're converting from UK to US size.
Yeah.
And there's a metric size there, so it's
Yes.
2 mil. I'm guessing for lace and cobweb type,
Yes.
2¼ mil, all the way up to 25 mil. I mean, if
Yeah.
that's 10,
Yeah, that they're quite big.
25 mil are going to be right hefty.
Yeah.
Daddy needles.
Hmm.
Big daddy. Cool.
So-
Okay, so talk quite a lot about this, but so I'm still not quite clear. Does the material matter?
The material for the needles, yes, I would definitely say.
It matters in terms of personal preference.
Yeah.
But I don't have to have a type of material for a type of garment.
So sometimes with certain rules, so for example, I've found that when I knit with mohair or something that's really, really hairy, the metal needles seems to slide better, so I can knit faster on a metal needle.
So this
than
is
I
wool
can-
that's got a haze around
Yeah.
it, which I learned was a term.
Yeah. So I got a wee ball here of some. This is not the kit silk haze, but that is the cashmere haze. But you can see that wee fluffy. I just find that I knit. This is better on your aluminium really slidey needles.
Because you want it to slide.
Yeah, because I want it to slide and I want to be knitting fast. Speed for me is important.
But you could also have a situation where you don't want it to slide and you want it to grip.
Yes.
In which case,
Wooden needles
potentially
are-
a wooden needle
Yeah.
is better.
Yeah. And also see
It's
wooden
quite
needles.
subtle. That's a subtle thing.
It is a subtle thing, and generally I prefer to knit with wood because it feels warmer.
It feels warmer. If you've got sore hands or arthritis,
Yes, I would.
then I think that wood would have a slight difference.
I have heard a lot of people preferring wood. I've recommended a couple of people that they were knitting with wood rather than metal when they're having arthritis, and they're coming back all the time saying, "You're absolutely right. I didn't know that the difference."
I noticed.
so
I noticed that you've not got in the shop the grey needles you got in school, but you can still get them, can't you?
Yeah, you can.
Kind of standard, almost NHS needles or something.
Yes, I did have them to begin with.
Yeah.
But people stopped buying them, and also in the bigger sizes the needles were plastic, and those needles really grip onto the yarn. So what happened was that people were knitting in the big wool, They would buy the cheap needles to just save some money, and then they would come in again 2 days later and buy the sing needles because they needed something that was a bit slightier. They basically didn't like the plastic ones, and yeah, the grey needles just didn't work for me. People
Interesting. So I think the last thing you were saying is, so we've got needles that are in the round. Let's get a bigger pair.
So the biggest ones, yeah.
And I just wanted to kind of point out, because I was surprised by this, that you start to, the needle itself is quite stumpy. But,
Yeah.
and this is an obvious thing, but it's not if you're not a knitter. The fabric starts to collect around this.
Yes.
Right? But if you've got these needles, and you can knit the same flat knitting and flat knitting if you wanted,
Yeah.
you would have to bunch up the fabric on the needle itself.
Yeah.
So that's why they're long, right?
Yes, so
No?
this one, this one can be used for a garment,
Yeah.
whereas the shorter ones here is really more kind of smaller projects.
Right, so these are good for beginners because they're shorter,
Yeah, and you should,
they're thick,
yeah,
they're good for big wool,
yeah,
and they're actually what we sell as our beginner knitting kits to learn to knit kits.
yeah. So,
Cool.
and also because they grip the yarn a little bit more
Yeah, I get that.
than these ones. Because those are both wood, these ones here, but
Yeah.
those ones just have a little bit
A little
more
bit
of a
more.
grip.
They're certainly not rough, but they've got a bit more. They're not as finished. They're not as varnished as that one.
Yeah, they're not as smooth. So that's why they're good for beginners, so your stitches don't kind of fall off. But
Okay.
they don't get stuck either.
That's been good.
Yeah, so
Let us know what you think. Any questions, give us a shout. Let's keep knitting.
but also one thing, so when you
Oh,
have
you're not finished.
no,
Okay.
I was just kind of thought one thing, last thing was that when you start on these ones as a beginner, as soon as you're really comfortable knitting, I would recommend you go over to circular needles.
Because
Just because you've got so many patterns nowadays that is on in the round. So the quicker you get used to circular needles, the more you got just a
most patterns are in the round.
not
Is that what you
most,
said?
but no, not most, but a lot of most of the new patterns I would say is and the new trend is knitting top down. So if you get used to circular needles, you're then setting yourself up for being able to knit all these fancy new patterns.
Let's explore that in the next video.
Yeah.
Okay, hope that was useful. Give us a shout, let us know. Leave comments. Thank you, bye.
Bye.